Mayon Volcano's 47-day eruption is not stopping. And what is happening right now on the Philippines' most dangerous volcano has scientists more alarmed than at any point in the last 15 years. Incandescent lava is cascading down its slopes every single night. The ground beneath the mountain keeps swelling. Pyroclastic flows are racing down the flanks faster than anything recorded during the last crisis. And Alert Level 3 refuses to drop, because every instrument surrounding that mountain is screaming that something far worse is still building underneath. 80,000 people have already fled their homes. Entire villages sit completely empty. Farms that took generations to build now sit abandoned inside a danger zone patrolled by armed military around the clock. And the numbers coming out of Mayon right now are breaking records that stood for over a decade. 5,533 tons of sulfur dioxide are escaping from that crater every single day. To put that in perspective, 6 weeks ago, that number was 195 tons. That is a 28-fold increase in just over 5 weeks, and it is still climbing. But here is what has volcanologists in complete panic. That gas is not just pollution. It is a signal. It is the volcano revealing exactly what is happening deep underground. And what it is saying is that massive amounts of fresh magma are surging toward the surface right now. Not slowing down, not running out, building. An endless supply of molten rock feeding this eruption from reservoirs so deep that 47 days of continuous activity has not even come close to emptying them. The lava dome sitting at the summit has already grown to 3.2 million cubic meters of unstable volcanic material, perched more than 2,000 meters above the communities below.
To understand why this is critical, consider the past. In 1984, Mayon's lava dome reached 2.88 million cubic meters before it catastrophically collapsed, sending superheated pyroclastic flows racing 7 kilometers down the mountain. That dome was smaller than the one currently growing today. And today's dome continues to expand with every passing hour. Scientists are observing the same warning signs: repeated patterns, seismic signals, ground deformation, and a deadly buildup. And the most frightening part? No one can predict when it will end. The volcano operates on its own schedule, completely indifferent to the 80,000 families taking shelter in gymnasiums, waiting as if their fate depended on the mountain's whims. So here's the question no scientist can answer. Is Mayon's 47-day ordeal finally nearing its climax, or are we witnessing the calm before a devastating eruption that could bury everything in its path? January 6, 2026. 1:20 p.m. local time. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology raises Mayon to Alert Level 3. Within hours, pyroclastic density currents begin forming from the collapsing lava dome, racing down Bonga Gully on the volcano's southeast flank. The crisis has begun.
That was 47 days ago. What has happened since then is not what anyone expected. In the first 24 hours after the alert level was raised, monitoring stations record 100 pyroclastic density currents in a single day. Scientists who have studied Mayon for decades describe the intensity as exceptional. The first ashfall dusts the villages of Bususay and Daga. Emergency evacuations displace 3,476 residents from communities sitting within the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone. Families leave with whatever they can carry. Most expect to be home within days. Week 2 brings no relief. Activity intensifies rather than subsides. Sulfur dioxide emissions climb above the 195 tons per day baseline that scientists recorded in early January. Evacuation zones expand as pyroclastic flows begin traveling farther down the mountain slopes. The pattern that should show declining activity after an initial burst instead shows acceleration. The volcano is not releasing pressure, it is building it. By week 3, the ground itself begins to move. GPS stations and electronic tilt meters detect accelerating inflation in the volcano's eastern sectors. The earth beneath Mayon is swelling outward, pushed by magma pressure rising from reservoirs deep below. The danger zone extends beyond 6 kilometers in sectors where pyroclastic currents have traveled farthest. Evacuee numbers climb past 15,000. Officials expand shelter operations. Nobody is talking about going home anymore. Week 4 shatters every earlier projection. Displacement surges beyond 25,000 people. Emergency shelters strain against capacity limits. Sulfur dioxide crosses 1,000 tons per day. Scientists begin recognizing that this eruption is fundamentally different from the 2023 crisis that lasted 6 months at alert level 3. That eruption never produced sulfur dioxide readings approaching current levels. That eruption involved surface lava movement without the deep magma supply now actively feeding Mayon's crater. This is something else entirely. Weeks 5 and 6 bring the numbers that alarm the international volcanological community. Evacuee totals reach 80,000 displaced residents across multiple municipalities. Sulfur dioxide peaks at 5,533 tons per day, the highest reading recorded at Mayon in 15 years. Research institutions from Japan, the United States, and Europe request immediate access to monitoring data. The scientific world is watching. 47 days after that first alert, the situation is unchanged in one critical way. Magma supply shows no indication of exhaustion. The deep reservoir continues feeding fresh molten rock toward the surface. The volcano is not finished. It has not even slowed down. 5,533 tons every single day. That is the number that changed everything. To understand why that figure has volcanologists losing sleep, you first need to understand what sulfur dioxide actually reveals. When magma rises from deep chambers toward the surface, dissolved gases escape first. Sulfur dioxide concentration tells scientists exactly how much fresh molten rock is actively moving beneath the crater. The higher the reading, the larger the magma supply feeding the eruption. It is not just a measurement. It is the volcano's confession, broadcasting in real time exactly what is happening thousands of meters underground. On January 8th, instruments measured 195 tons per day. Elevated, but within expected parameters for alert level 3 activity. Scientists monitored the numbers carefully, but without alarm. 5 weeks later, that reading hits 5,533 tons per day, a multiplication so dramatic that scientists initially questioned their own instruments. The highest sulfur dioxide emission recorded at Mayon since 2011. Scientists who have spent careers studying this volcano describe the jump as unlike anything in their professional experience. That 2011 comparison is not a reassuring one. Elevated sulfur dioxide that year preceded an eruption that forced evacuations lasting months and caused widespread agricultural devastation across Albay province. The same gas, the same pattern, the same deadly buildup now repeating itself with even higher numbers. Dr. Teresito Bacolcol, director of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, addressed the implications directly during a February 12th briefing. Sustained emissions at this level indicate an open conduit system. Magma is not trapped beneath a sealed dome. It is actively circulating, degassing continuously, and being resupplied from reservoirs deep beneath the volcano. The mountain is not exhausting a finite batch of molten rock. Fresh magma keeps arriving. The sulfur dioxide readings are only part of the picture. Monitoring stations recorded 847 rockfall events in the past 24 hours alone. Ground deformation data confirms what scientists feared most. GPS measurements and electronic tilt meters show the volcano's edifice has been inflating continuously since June 2024. The eastern and southeastern sectors display the most pronounced swelling. Magma pressure is not decreasing, it is building. Seismic instruments detect an average of 47 volcanic earthquakes daily. Each tremor represents magma and volcanic gases surging beneath the surface. The mountain is not resting between episodes.
Fresh molten rock is actively flowing toward Mayon's crater at rates that alarm every scientist who has studied the volcano across decades of eruptions. The data paints a single, unavoidable picture. This eruption is not slowing down. It is intensifying, and nothing suggests that will change anytime soon. The lava dome at Mayon's summit is the most dangerous feature on the mountain. Scientists don't describe it as merely a hazard or a concern. They call it an active threat, one that becomes more structurally unstable with each passing hour. At 3.22 million cubic meters of unstable volcanic material sitting 2,462 meters above sea level, it represents the single most critical factor in this entire crisis. To understand why that number keeps volcanologists awake at night, you need to understand what a lava dome actually is. When thick, viscous magma pushes toward the surface but cannot flow freely, it accumulates at the crater, forming a bulging mass. Solidified rock on the outside, superheated molten material within. It is inherently unstable. The pressure beneath it grows continuously, while the outer shell fractures further with every surge of magma from below. A lava dome is not a cap on the eruption. It is a loaded weapon.
The history of this particular dome makes the current situation even more alarming. In 1984, Mayon's lava dome reached 2.8 million cubic meters before it catastrophically collapsed in a single event. That collapse generated pyroclastic density currents, superheated avalanches of gas, ash, and volcanic debris that raced 7 kilometers down the mountain slopes, destroying everything in their path. The 1984 eruption forced evacuations lasting months and left a permanent scar on the collective memory of every community living in Mayon's shadow. The 1984 dome measured 2.8 million cubic meters at the moment of collapse. The dome sitting above Mayon's crater today has already exceeded that volume, and it has not yet collapsed. The seismic data surrounding the dome makes the comparison to 1984 impossible to ignore. Dr. Maria Antonia Bornas, Chief of Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction at PHIVOLCS, has identified disturbing parallels between current instrument readings and the signatures recorded in the weeks before the 1984 eruption. Harmonic tremors indicating sustained magma movement. Volcanic earthquakes clustering at shallow depths beneath the summit. Ground deformation accelerating in specific sectors directly beneath the dome's base. These are not coincidental patterns. They are a recognizable sequence that this volcano has performed before. Pyroclastic density currents are already racing down Mayon's flanks at rates exceeding anything documented during the 2023 crisis. The permanent 6-kilometer danger zone remains strictly enforced, with military checkpoints and armed personnel patrolling the perimeter around the clock. But pyroclastic flows have already traveled beyond those boundaries in the sectors where activity is most intense. PHIVOLCS monitors 3 specific triggers that would immediately escalate the alert to level 4. Rapid dome growth beyond current rates. Escalating harmonic tremor intensity. Ground deformation accelerating past established thresholds. Any single one of those signals indicates an imminent hazardous eruption. Right now, all 3 are moving in the wrong direction. Behind every number in this crisis stands a person. 80,000 displaced residents, 19,847 families, 23 times the initial evacuation count from January 6th. Each statistic represents someone who watched their home disappear in the rearview mirror with no certainty of return. The numbers are staggering. The faces behind them are harder to look at. Rosa Martinez is 67 years old. She has survived 3 Mayon eruptions across 6 decades of life on the volcano's fertile slopes. She knows this mountain better than most scientists who study it. On January 7th, she evacuated from Barangay Mabinit in Legazpi City, carrying a single plastic bag. Inside it, her medications, her husband's death certificate, and a photograph of her children's baptism. Those were the things she chose when she had minutes to decide what her life was worth carrying. 47 days later, she sleeps on a gymnasium floor in Tabaco City, alongside 340 other evacuees. Her farm sits empty inside the danger zone. Her carabao was relocated to a temporary livestock facility 15 kilometers away. She checks her phone for PHIVOLCS updates before sunrise every single morning. 8-year-old Marco Dela Cruz has not attended school since January 6th. He has nightmares about the volcano. He refuses to sleep without the lights on. Provincial health officials document a 180% increase in pediatric anxiety cases at evacuation center medical stations across Albay province. Counseling resources cannot come close to meeting the demand. Marco asks his mother every day when they can go home. She does not have an answer. The shelter conditions compound the suffering. 13 government evacuation centers now house populations exceeding their designed overcapacity by 200%. Tobacco City Sports Complex holds 2,100 residents inside a facility built for 800. Families sleep on cardboard laid across concrete floors. Portable toilets serve ratios of 1 unit per 85 people. The smell of confined humanity mixes with sulfur drifting from the mountain that put them there. The economic devastation runs deeper than the immediate crisis. Coconut plantations, abaca fields, and rice paddies, representing generations of accumulated labor, sit completely abandoned inside the danger zone. The Albay Provincial Agriculture Office estimates 127 million pesos in crop losses during the first month alone. That number climbs with every passing day that families cannot return. Small farms that survived for generations now face losses that no relief pack can address. Governor Noel Rosal assures evacuees that relief supplies remain sustainable even for extended displacement. The Department of Social Welfare and Development has distributed 45,000 food packs. Water trucks service shelters twice daily. But sustainability is not the same as dignity. And dignity is what 47 days on a gymnasium floor slowly, quietly destroys. The volcano decides when they go home. They do not. The church bell tower still stands. Protruding from volcanic debris in the town of Cagsawa, it is the only visible remnant of an entire community that ceased to exist in minutes. In 1814, Mayon erupted with a violence so absolute that it buried the town completely, killing approximately 1,200 people before most of them understood what was happening. 2 centuries later, that bell tower remains, not as a tourist attraction, but as a warning that this mountain has always been capable of erasing human life at a scale that defies comprehension. Mayon has erupted 54 times since 1616. Every single eruption eventually ended. Communities rebuilt during the quiet periods, returned to the fertile volcanic soil, and planted new crops on the slopes of the mountain that had just tried to kill them. Then the cycle began again. The history of Mayon is not a history of disaster. It is a history of repetition. The same patterns, the same warnings, the same deadly buildup appearing across centuries with the mechanical consistency of something that was never going to stop.
The 1897 eruption of Mayon claimed over 400 lives. The 1984 event triggered evacuations that lasted months, leaving communities across Albay province struggling to rebuild their livelihoods. Among all historical precedents, it is the 1984 eruption that scientists repeatedly reference. The seismic patterns recorded in the weeks leading up to that eruption now mirror the readings on today's monitoring instruments. Experts say this overlap is no coincidence. It is the same underground fingerprint of a volcano preparing to release its accumulated pressure in a single violent event. Dr. Maria Antonia Boris, Chief of Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction at PHIVOLCS, calls the comparison deeply concerning. What makes the current activity far more alarming than previous eruptions is its scale. In 1814, when Cagsawa was buried, the surrounding region supported only a fraction of today's population. The 1984 eruption impacted significantly smaller communities. Today, over 400,000 people live within 20 kilometers of the crater, putting a massive population at potential risk.
A major eruption would not threaten a town. It would threaten an entire region across multiple provinces. The 2023 eruption that kept Mayon at alert level 3 for 6 months offers the most recent point of comparison, and it offers no comfort. That eruption never produced sulfur dioxide readings approaching current levels. It involved surface lava extrusion without the deep magma supply now actively feeding the crater. Scientists who monitored 2023 closely described the current activity as fundamentally different in character and scale. The international volcanological community has taken notice. Research institutions from Japan, the United States, and Europe have all requested access to PHIVOLCS monitoring data. The consensus emerging from that international consultation offers no reassurance. The historical record does not calm fears about Mayon, it amplifies them. Scientists at PHIVOLCS have modeled 3 possible trajectories for Mayon's ongoing eruption. Each scenario carries profoundly different consequences for the 80,000 displaced residents waiting in evacuation shelters across Albay province. None of them offer easy comfort, and only one of them ends without catastrophe. Scenario 1 offers cautious hope. Sulfur dioxide emissions gradually decline over coming weeks, signaling that the deep magma reservoir is finally beginning to exhaust its supply. The lava dome stabilizes through slow, controlled extrusion rather than catastrophic structural collapse. Pyroclastic activity decreases to levels that permit phased return of evacuees living closest to danger zone boundaries. This pattern mirrors the 2023 eruption that maintained alert level 3 for 6 months before eventually de-escalating. It is the outcome every displaced family is praying for. It is also the outcome that current data does not support. Scenario 2 extends the crisis indefinitely. Current activity persists for 6 months or longer. Sulfur dioxide remains elevated. The dome continues growing without catastrophic failure. Evacuees face displacement measured in seasons rather than weeks. Farms go untended through the planting cycle. Businesses remain shuttered. Children fall further behind in their education. Economic devastation compounds quietly, day after day, in ways that relief packs cannot address. Widespread casualties are avoided through sustained evacuation enforcement, but the damage to livelihoods, mental health, and community cohesion accumulates into a disaster of its own kind. Scenario 3 is the nightmare that no one in Albay province allows themselves to speak aloud. Complete dome collapse in a single catastrophic event. Pyroclastic density currents exceeding temperatures of 1,000 degrees Celsius race down Mayon slopes at speeds surpassing 100 kilometers per hour. Anyone within 6 kilometers dies instantly. Warning time could be minutes. It could be 0. A VAI-4 eruption would devastate the entire Bicol region, affecting populations across 3 provinces and potentially disrupting aviation throughout Southeast Asia. This is not a remote theoretical possibility. It is a scenario that the current dome size, the current seismic signatures, and the current ground deformation data all make scientifically credible. Beyond these 3 scenarios lies an additional threat that extends the danger far past any eruption's immediate timeline. The approaching rainy season transforms accumulated volcanic debris into lahars, volcanic mudflows that follow river channels downstream at tremendous velocity, threatening communities far beyond the permanent danger zone. Lahar risk persists for years after initial eruption activity subsides. The mountain's danger does not end when the lava stops. PHIVOLCS requires 3 specific conditions before modifying evacuation orders: sustained decline in seismic activity, ground deformation reversal, measurable reduction in sulfur dioxide emissions. None of these conditions currently exist. The volcano keeps its own schedule. Science can only watch and report what it sees. The Philippine government is not watching Mayon from a distance. It is fully mobilized, operating at crisis level across every department and agency with any capacity to respond. The scale of that response reflects the scale of the disaster it is trying to contain. The Department of National Defense has deployed 2,400 military personnel across Albay province. Army trucks, transport evacuees from danger zone perimeters to shelter facilities. Helicopter assets remain positioned at Legazpi Airport, ready for emergency extraction operations if the situation escalates beyond current parameters. Armed forces of the Philippines units patrol the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone around the clock, preventing unauthorized re-entry by residents desperate to check on farms, livestock, and homes they left behind 47 days ago. Every person stopped at those checkpoints represents a life potentially saved. Every person who slips through represents a life at risk. Governor Noel Rosal coordinates daily briefings connecting 47 local government units across affected areas through a communication network that operates 24 hours a day. Municipal mayors and barangay captains feed information up through the chain. Decisions affecting tens of thousands of residents flow back down. The coordination is extensive, professional, and under enormous strain. The Department of Social Welfare and Development has released 89 million pesos in emergency assistance since January 6th. Field offices distribute family food packs, hygiene kits, and sleeping materials to evacuation centers across 6 municipalities.
Mobile medical teams provide care and medication at evacuation shelters, while the Department of Agriculture declares a state of calamity for farmlands, estimating crop losses over 180 million pesos. Over 3,400 livestock have been relocated, and 47,000 students remain out of school as distance learning struggles with inconsistent connectivity. Roads, bridges, and aviation routes are monitored and reinforced to cope with ash and debris. For 47 days, Mayon's incandescent lava dome pulses with heat, sending pyroclastic flows down its flanks. Monitoring instruments track every tremor, ground swelling, and sulfur dioxide release, while scientists watch the data constantly. Families wait in shelters, farmers calculate losses, and uncertainty erodes hope. Despite the danger, communities have rebuilt for centuries, accepting the mountain as home. Mayon will eventually quiet, but for now the eruption continues, and the mountain has not finished speaking.